In recent weeks, many farms located near forests and grasslands have reported seeing foxes more frequently around livestock areas. At first, they were mostly spotted early in the morning or late in the afternoon, moving along fences, following field edges, or crossing open ground. Some farmers initially considered this normal wildlife activity. However, as sightings increased, more concerning signs began to appear. Chickens, ducks, and other small animals started disappearing, while tracks and areas dug out beneath fences were found around the coops. Cameras also captured foxes carrying food away from the farms and heading back toward the woods. As these incidents continued across multiple properties, residents realized the situation had become a growing concern. Foxes were no longer appearing only around poultry coops. They were also seen near barns, feed storage areas, gardens, and small roads connecting farmland with nearby residential areas. Some even approached yards at night in search of pet food or organic waste left outside. Their ability to adapt and move quietly allowed them to reach these food sources without being easily noticed. After returning several times, some foxes appeared to learn the least visible routes and the quietest times of day. As a result, farms with gaps in fencing, locations close to wooded areas, or food left outdoors became more likely to attract repeated visits. As fox activity increased, farmers began inspecting their properties to identify the routes the animals were using most often. Cameras were placed where tracks had been found, while fences were checked for gaps or areas where the ground had been dug up. Farmers also paid attention to narrow trails through tall grass, areas near drainage ditches, and openings connecting wooded areas with fields. Once the main travel routes were identified, traps were positioned along fences, near paths leading to poultry coops, and around field edges. Bait was used to attract the foxes, but each setup had to blend naturally into the surroundings to avoid making them suspicious. The first few days showed that catching foxes was not as simple as placing traps along their usual paths. She's gonna be all frisky. Cameras recorded several foxes approaching the area, stopping to look around, and then suddenly changing direction. Some circled the traps before moving on. Foxes that had already visited the farms many times seemed especially sensitive to unfamiliar smells and new objects. Because of this, operators regularly reviewed camera footage to determine exactly how the animals were approaching. Some traps were moved closer to natural travel paths, while others were covered with dry grass, soil, and nearby branches. Adjustments were made gradually to avoid changing the environment too quickly, and causing the foxes to abandon their familiar routes. After repeated inspections and adjustments, the traps began producing better results. Several foxes were caught along narrow paths beside fences that they commonly used to reach poultry areas. Whenever a trap was triggered, farmers quickly checked the site, handled the situation, and reset the equipment. Camera footage continued to show that individual foxes often used different routes. While some traveled along field edges, others approached from behind barns, drainage ditches, or areas covered by vegetation. This forced farmers to expand their monitoring instead of focusing on a single location. Areas where fresh tracks appeared were continually monitored, so the control system could better match the foxes' changing movement patterns. After several weeks of control efforts, fox activity around poultry coops and livestock areas began to decline. Cameras recorded fewer visits, and small animals were no longer disappearing as frequently as before. However, farmers continued monitoring the area because the surrounding forests and grasslands still provided suitable habitat for foxes. New animals from nearby areas could still move in if they found an accessible food source. For that reason, fences continued to be inspected, leftover food was kept from being left outside, and cameras remained active along key travel routes. For farms located close to natural habitat, controlling fox activity remains a long-term process that requires regular monitoring and continued adjustments. Before the sun slipped behind the low hills, the farm had returned to its familiar sense of calm. The chickens wandered peacefully around the yard in search of food, while each enclosure was carefully inspected before nightfall. However, the farm owner knew that the most dangerous part of the day was only just beginning. For several consecutive weeks, a number of chickens had disappeared without leaving behind many clues. There were no loud disturbances, no damaged fences, only a few scattered feathers on the ground and faint, small footprints leading toward the edge of the woods. These signs suggested that a fox had repeatedly approached the area and was gradually becoming familiar with the terrain around the farm. Unlike many predators that appear only by chance, foxes often spend several nights observing an area before making a serious attempt to approach their target. Each time it appeared, the fox moved slowly, stopping frequently to listen and sniff the air. The slightest unfamiliar scent or subtle change along its route was enough to make it turn back and disappear into the darkness. This remarkable caution meant that dealing with a fox could never rely on hasty reactions. To protect a flock effectively, it was essential to understand exactly how the animal selected its travel route and when it chose to move. The wildlife control team began installing several infrared trail cameras along the edge of the woodland. After a few nights, the recordings revealed that the fox almost always appeared at the same time each night. It followed a narrow dirt path running parallel to the fence, crossed through a patch of low brush, and then circled behind the poultry enclosure. Even when the weather changed, its route remained virtually the same. On windy nights, the fox simply arrived a little later, yet it still approached from the darkest area with the least human activity. This consistency showed that it had developed complete confidence in its familiar route. After nearly 10 days of monitoring, the control team decided not to place the trap beside the poultry enclosure. Instead, they selected a location along the path the fox regularly traveled. A foothold trap was carefully positioned on a patch of soft ground where the animal's footprints had repeatedly appeared in the camera footage. Once it was firmly secured, the entire area was covered with a thin layer of soil, dry leaves, and bits of grass that blended perfectly with the surrounding landscape. Every footprint, displaced twig, and patch of freshly disturbed earth was carefully concealed to minimize any sign of human activity. Given the fox's exceptional awareness, even the smallest unnatural detail could cause it to alter its course. The following nights became a true test of patience for those monitoring the area. The cameras repeatedly captured the fox approaching to within a short distance of the trap before suddenly stopping. It lowered its head to sniff every patch of ground, stepped backward a few paces, circled to one side, and then returned to inspect the area once again. On some nights, it stood perfectly still for several minutes, its ears constantly turning toward every sound coming from the farm. The control team left everything exactly as it was, adding no bait and making no adjustments to the trap's position. They understood that the more they interfered, the greater the chance of leaving behind human scent or other traces, whereas a stable, undisturbed environment was what would gradually cause the fox to lower its guard. One morning, while a blanket of mist still covered the fields, the cameras detected prolonged movement at the trap site. After days of careful observation and cautious investigation, the fox had finally stepped onto the exact spot along its familiar route. The outcome was not the result of luck, but the reward for meticulous monitoring, careful analysis of the animal's movement patterns, and choosing the right moment to act. After resolving the situation, the farm owner continued reinforcing the fencing, sealing every gap beneath the wire mesh, trimming back dense vegetation around the poultry enclosure, and removing all leftover feed to reduce the chances of attracting other foxes. This story demonstrates that protecting livestock depends not only on a single trap, but also on understanding animal behavior, maintaining patient observation, and creating a secure farming environment that leaves predators with as few opportunities as possible to approach.
On many farms bordering forests and grasslands, foxes have begun appearing with increasing frequency. Leaving their hiding places deep in the woods, they gradually make their way toward farms in search of food. Within just a few days, some of them learn the routes, remember when to appear, and repeatedly return. At first, residents only occasionally catch sight of a small figure darting past and cannot clearly identify what kind of animal it is. But as the sightings become more frequent and the tracks around the livestock areas grow more obvious, they eventually realize that foxes have begun entering the farms. The residents decide to monitor the area continuously for several days. At first, the foxes mainly appear at night, quietly following fences and familiar trails to approach the livestock areas. But before long, their behavior becomes much bolder. They begin showing up in broad daylight, openly scouting the area and moving close to the chicken coop before looking for opportunities to attack the poultry. As these visits become increasingly frequent, the residents realize that they are no longer random encounters. The foxes have started treating the farm as a familiar and reliable source of food. The foxes have already caused serious losses, taking away the results of many days of work and care by the farmers. As the number of poultry continues to decline, they realize they can no longer simply stand by and watch. After days of observation and discussion, they agree to install a trapping system. A foothold trap is carefully concealed and covered with soil, so the surface looks as natural as before, while a tractor bait is placed nearby to draw the animal closer. However, foxes are fast and intelligent, and especially wary of changes in their surroundings. So gaining their confidence and getting them to enter a prepared area may require several days of patience. The farmers soon realize that the foxes do not rely on a single route, but constantly change the way they approach the farm. Sometimes they move along the edge of the grass, while at other times they circle behind the poultry area to avoid detection. Because of this, the farmers decide to place 2 additional traps in locations where tracks regularly appear. One is positioned near an open patch beside the fence, while the other is set behind the farm. Once the traps are concealed and the bait is in place, the farmers can do little more than watch from a distance and wait to see whether the foxes will again move close to the prepared locations. After a long period with no activity, the sign everyone has been waiting for finally appears. From time to time, the animal stops, raises its head to scan the surroundings, then lowers its nose close to the ground to check the scents around it. Its caution keeps it from moving closer for quite some time. Still, the smell of the food continues to draw it forward, gradually reducing the distance between the fox and the trap site. After hesitating several times, the fox finally focuses on the bait ahead. As it takes another step, the trap mechanism activates, bringing a result after many days of patient observation and waiting. Eventually, the traps begin to produce results. The routes most frequently used by the foxes have been identified accurately, and several animals are gradually held when they return to their familiar feeding areas. The residents quickly visit each location to inspect the sites, collect equipment, and reassess the entire area around the livestock enclosures. From that point on, fresh tracks become less common, and sightings of foxes lingering near the fences decrease noticeably. The chickens and ducks can return to their usual feeding areas, while the farmers are finally able to feel more at ease after days of constant monitoring. The biggest lesson is not about how many traps are used, but about how the residents change the environment around the farm as a whole. Foxes are intelligent, patient animals with strong memories. If food remains easily available and gaps in the fencing are left open, they will continue to return. Only by combining monitoring, stronger barriers, proper sanitation, and carefully positioned traps can farmers reduce losses in a lasting way. Foxes remain part of the natural environment, but with careful preparation and responsible action, people can protect their livestock without allowing the conflict to continue escalating.
It all began on what seemed like an ordinary morning. When Pike walked out to the coop, the chickens were huddled in a corner, crying out in panic. A patch of earth beneath the fence had recently been dug up, while part of the coop roof appeared to have been pushed out of place. Pike searched the yard but found only a few faint tracks. At first he assumed a stray cat had slipped through. Yet within a few nights, more poultry disappeared. As the same signs kept returning, Pike began to suspect the most cunning predator around the farm: a fox. Suspicion alone was not enough. Pike needed to know exactly what happened after everyone went to sleep. He installed infrared cameras inside the chicken coop, along the bottom of the fence, and beside the tree line behind the farm. On the first night, several small shapes suddenly appeared on the screen. A reddish-brown fox moved around the yard so quietly that it made almost no sound. It stopped at the edge of the yard, raised its head to check the wind, then lowered its nose to inspect the ground. Instead of heading straight for the coop, it circled the area, watched the lights, and tested several approaches before vanishing into the bushes. On later visits, it returned at nearly the same hour. Even when it encountered the resident cat, the fox showed no interest. Pike realized these were not random visits. The fox was studying the farm before brazenly stealing chickens. He continued watching patiently, and the collected footage gradually revealed a hidden route the animal had used for many nights. Once Pike had memorized the fox's usual path, he quietly prepared his next move. A steel foothold trap was placed along a narrow passage between the trees and the fence, where the animal appeared almost every night. Every step was handled carefully. The dry leaves were returned to their original positions, the soil remained undisturbed, and the nearby branches were left untouched. From the outside, nothing looked different from previous nights. Still, the fox seemed to sense that something had changed. The cameras showed it approaching slowly, stopping for a long time, and raising its head to observe the area. Its ears turned in several directions while its nose tested every light current of air. On one night, it jumped directly onto the roof of the chicken coop. On another, it circled the building from every direction, searching for a way inside. Pike did not rush. He knew the fox remembered not only its route but also the smallest changes in its surroundings. This contest would therefore be decided not by speed, but by patience on both sides. Before dawn one morning, while cold mist still covered the poultry area, Pike's phone suddenly received a camera alert. A reddish-brown fox was struggling at the spot where the trap had been placed days earlier. It twisted its body, pulled at its leg, and searched in every direction for an escape, but its familiar retreat was now blocked. Pike quickly arrived to bring the situation under control. The battle of patience that had lasted many nights was finally over. Even so, he continued setting traps for other foxes. He believed that without further action, the chickens he had worked so hard to raise would soon become food for another predator. Pike did not always rely on a foothold trap. In another part of the farm, he placed a live capture cage to hold the fox while limiting injury. The animal continued arriving at its usual time, but repeatedly circled the cage and examined every unfamiliar scent. Eventually, it stepped inside and the door closed automatically. Once again, success came from careful observation, patience, and a clear understanding of the animal's behavior. This fox trapping story shows that protecting livestock and poultry involves more than placing a trap or building a stronger fence. More importantly, it requires the ability to recognize the smallest clues left by nature. Foxes are intelligent, patient, and always ready to take advantage of human mistakes. To respond effectively, farmers must show the same degree of patience. In many agricultural areas, farmers have begun regularly spotting foxes near livestock facilities. The foxes move close to chicken coops, duck houses, or areas where small animals are kept, especially in the early morning and late afternoon. Some individuals stand not far from the animal enclosures, observing their surroundings before approaching areas where food is available. When they notice that the area is empty of people, they quickly move closer to look for an opportunity to hunt. Some foxes travel along fences and disappear from sight after only a few minutes. Their repeated presence around the farm has made farmers pay increasing attention to their activity and begin looking for ways to protect their livestock. When they find a suitable opportunity, foxes begin moving deeper into livestock areas to hunt. They may approach chickens, ducks, or small animals that are active in the yard. Some scenes show foxes chasing poultry, quickly grabbing their prey and dragging it away from areas where many animals are gathered. After finding a convenient food source, many individuals continue returning to the farm on later occasions. Their hunting activity forces farmers to strengthen protection around their poultry, especially in areas where foxes appear frequently. This situation has led local residents to begin implementing fox control measures around livestock facilities. Foxes are not only active at night but have also been recorded appearing in the early morning and late afternoon. These are periods when livestock areas often have fewer people around, giving the animals easier opportunities to approach the enclosures. Some individuals move alone around the farm, while others are spotted in different areas on the same day. At times, a fox appears only briefly and quickly leaves after noticing people. Changes in their activity times make it difficult for residents to predict exactly when they will appear. Farmers have therefore begun observing the surrounding areas more carefully in order to choose an appropriate control method.
dig down here a little bit. We're going.
After identifying the areas where foxes frequently appear, farmers begin setting up a trapping system around the farm. Locations are selected near fences, pathways, and areas where foxes commonly approach in search of food. Bait is placed to attract them toward the traps. Instead of concentrating all the equipment in one location, farmers distribute it across several different positions to expand the control area. After the traps are installed, these locations are checked regularly to detect when a trap has been activated. The control effort is maintained to limit foxes from continuing to enter livestock areas and attack poultry.
Usually on here. Alrighty, folks. Just leave that stick. Lot. Just
After setting the traps, farmers regularly return to inspect the prepared locations. During one inspection, they discover that a fox has been caught in a trap and is still at the trapping site. The farmers approach to check the animal's condition and then carry out the necessary handling procedures in accordance with local regulations. After the animal has been handled, the trap is inspected again to ensure that no further problems have occurred. Similar cases continue to be recorded at other locations around the livestock area. Regular inspections allow farmers to quickly identify trapped foxes while also reducing the amount of time they remain confined in the traps. After some time of control efforts, fox activity around the farm decreases significantly. However, the animals have not disappeared completely. Some individuals continue to appear occasionally in areas where convenient food sources are available. The environment around the farm still provides many opportunities for feeding, from poultry to natural food sources. In addition, foxes living in nearby areas may move into the area and continue their activity around residential zones. Therefore, although their numbers and frequency of appearance are lower than before, farmers may still encounter foxes in the area. Their activity remains an issue that requires regular monitoring. It all began along the forest edges bordering residential areas, where groups of foxes were frequently seen. At first, their numbers were still small, but week after week, more foxes began appearing and they stayed around for longer periods. From the edge of the woods, they started following narrow roads, grassy paths, and fences as they gradually moved closer to residential neighborhoods. Even when people were nearby, many of them continued deeper into the streets instead of turning back. Once night fell, they spread out in search of prey, looking for food around yards and other quiet areas. After repeatedly exploring the surroundings, they began reaching nearby farms. The foxes quickly learned that at night, when human activity had died down, chicken coops and livestock areas were easier to approach. From then on, they did not appear just once, but returned night after night, searching for ways into the farms to find food. When the residents checked the chicken area the next morning, the scene was completely chaotic. Feathers were scattered across the ground and grass outside the coop, showing that something had happened during the night. Everyone immediately reviewed the security cameras around the farm and discovered that a fox had repeatedly been creeping closer to the chicken enclosure. Although wire fencing had already been installed around the area, it continued moving along the fence line, searching for places where it could get closer. In one recording, the fox approached the enclosure closely enough to send the chickens inside into a panic. Its persistence in returning and repeatedly trying to get closer to the coop began to worry the residents. They understood that if this continued, protecting the livestock would become increasingly difficult. With foxes continuing to appear around the farm, the residents decided to set traps to prevent them from returning. The traps had to be placed very carefully. A foothold trap was concealed beneath a thin layer of soil and dry leaves, while the surrounding area was restored as closely as possible to its original condition to avoid leaving unusual signs behind. Everyone understood that foxes have an extremely sensitive sense of smell and are highly cautious about even small changes in familiar surroundings. A single unfamiliar scent could be enough to make a fox turn away and avoid the area. For that reason, every detail had to be handled discreetly so the trap would have the best chance of working. That same night, the residents installed another trap in a nearby area where cameras had previously recorded frequent fox activity. Once everything was ready, they left the site and continued monitoring from a distance. Before long, a fox appeared from the edge of the woods and slowly moved toward the baited locations. It repeatedly stopped to sniff the air and look around before taking a few more steps. At one point, the fox came very close to the trap, making everyone think it was about to step into the right position. However, just before reaching the bait, it suddenly stopped, turned around, and walked away. After many nights of patient waiting, the foxes finally began moving closer to the trapping area. The camera recorded one of them repeatedly investigating the bait placed nearby. This time, instead of turning back as it had on previous nights, it continued farther into the area. Only a few minutes later, the trap was triggered and the fox was held in place. When the residents came to inspect the area the following morning, they realized that all the days of monitoring and patient waiting were finally beginning to pay off. It was the first clear result showing that their control plan was moving in the right direction. The story of these foxes is not simply about a conflict between people and wildlife, but also about how fragile the boundary between farms and nature can be. As human living areas expand, encounters like these become increasingly difficult to avoid. The important thing is not to remove every trace of wildlife, but to learn how to protect livestock, manage food sources, and maintain a safe distance from predators living nearby. Traps may solve part of the problem, but careful observation, patience, and the ability to adapt are what ultimately help people maintain a more lasting balance. Across the vast fields of the countryside, farmers must always remain alert for a small but highly unpredictable predator. It may not possess the strength of a bear or the crop-destroying power of a wild hog, but a single careless night can be enough for several chickens to disappear. That predator is the red fox, an animal known for its intelligence, patience, and remarkable ability to adapt. It all began when surveillance cameras repeatedly captured the shadowy figure of a fox appearing near the poultry enclosure. Rather than rushing toward its target, the fox spent several nights quietly studying the farm. It moved along the fence line, paused in dark corners, checked the direction of the wind, and memorized the activity around it. Each time it returned, it seemed to understand more about the location of the lights, the entrances, and the times when people left the area. The farmers quickly reinforced the fencing, sealed every opening, and installed motion-activated lights. These measures worked for several days, but the fox soon found a way to adapt. It changed the time of its visits, chose darker areas, and began approaching from a different direction. Before long, fresh tracks appeared again in the soft ground behind the chicken coop. Instead of reacting too quickly, the farmers began watching more carefully. Additional cameras were placed along the field edges, tree lines, and narrow trails surrounding the farm. After several days of observation, a clear movement pattern gradually emerged. The fox almost always followed the same route. It avoided open ground and stayed close to tall grass, where it could remain hidden. Each time it appeared, it stepped through nearly the exact same places, as though following a path it had memorized long ago. This repeated behavior helped the farmers identify the best location for a trap. They continued monitoring the trail for several more nights to make sure the animal would not suddenly change its route. The device was concealed beneath a thin layer of soil, while dry leaves and grass were carefully rearranged to preserve the area's natural appearance. However, setting the trap was only one part of the plan. It was positioned directly along the trail the fox used most often, where the highest concentration of tracks had been found. The mechanism was carefully hidden beneath a thin layer of soil, then covered with dry leaves and natural grass so that nothing appeared unusual. Cameras were also used to monitor the location and confirm that the fox continued following its familiar route. Foxes have an extremely sensitive sense of smell and can detect even the smallest changes in their surroundings. An unfamiliar scent, disturbed soil, or a human footprint could be enough to make the animal change direction. For that reason, every step was carried out carefully to minimize any alteration to the landscape. Over the following days, the cameras continued recording the fox as it approached the prepared location, but it always stopped to observe before quietly moving away. After many days of waiting, the decisive moment finally arrived. Early one foggy morning, the camera sent an unusual alert. Fresh tracks led directly toward the route that had been monitored for weeks. After repeated inspections and adjustments, the plan finally produced results. Success came not only from the trap itself, but more importantly from understanding how the fox selected its path and responded to changes in its surroundings.
Back in a minute.
This story shows that protecting a farm is not as simple as setting a trap and waiting. Every footprint, every appearance on camera, and every disturbed section of fencing provides an important piece of information. When those details are connected, the animal's behavior gradually becomes clearer. The farmer's patience and careful observation allowed them to turn small clues into an effective strategy. The fox may not be the largest or strongest animal, but its caution, intelligence, and adaptability make it a highly unpredictable opponent. Sometimes the most effective confrontation is not based on strength, but on a battle of wits between human experience and the survival instincts of nature.
But having a couple pictures of
It all began when 2 chickens disappeared in one night. There was no major damage to the fence and no obvious signs of chaos, so Dustin thought it was only a minor incident. But over the next few mornings, the chickens kept gathering in one corner of the coop as if something had frightened them. He inspected the area and found small tracks beneath the fence and several small holes near the coop. On a poultry farm, a fox does not need the strength of a large predator.
There's one in the hole.
It only needs to find one weakness and remember it. As more birds disappeared, Dustin began to suspect that a fox had turned the farm into a regular feeding spot. Night cameras quickly confirmed Dustin's suspicion. At nearly the same time each evening, the fox appeared at the forest edge, followed the fence, and stopped behind the chicken coop. It often stood still for a long time before moving a few steps, as if checking whether anything had changed. The same pattern repeated over the following nights. Only during rain or strong wind shifts did it take another route. Dustin began marking each location on a farm map. In less than a week, a clear travel corridor emerged. The fox relied on habit, but that same habit exposed its weakness. Once the route was clear, Dustin chose a spot along the fox's regular path to place a legal foothold trap under local rules. The key was to leave the surroundings looking almost unchanged. Dry leaves stayed in place. The grass was disturbed as little as possible, and Dustin left quickly. But the fox was not easy to fool. Cameras repeatedly showed it approaching and standing still for a long time. Some nights it only sniffed the air and turned back. On others, it circled around before returning to the old route. Dustin kept the plan unchanged and continued watching. A few days later, on a cold morning with dew still on the grass, the camera sent an unusual movement alert. The fox had finally been caught. The result came not from luck, but from days of reading signs and understanding its movement.
All right, here he is.
And that's all it takes. You don't get a lot of blood or anything.
News of the captured fox quickly spread to nearby farms. Several families said they had also seen foxes around their land, but had not considered it a shared problem. Dustin realized the issue might extend beyond his own property. Foxes travel widely, and routes along forest edges can connect several farms. He shared what the cameras had recorded, especially common paths and the times the fox appeared. Nearby farmers began coordinating cameras, checking tracks, and using legal foothold traps at suitable locations. Instead of working separately, they created a broader monitoring system. Over time, the main travel routes became clearer and fox sightings near poultry coops began to decline.
Take a look at some stuff. First,
Dustin always reminds his neighbors that not every captured fox should be treated the same way. If the animal appears healthy, handling must still follow local law. But if it loses balance, behaves unusually, or shows signs of illness, people should avoid close contact. In that situation, the safer choice is to contact animal control or the proper authorities. In some areas, moving a fox elsewhere may also be restricted. Effective wildlife control is not only about catching the animal, but also handling it according to regulation. That in the end, Dustin's story shows that fox control is not simply about setting a trap and waiting. More important is understanding tracks, improving how poultry are protected, and maintaining long-term monitoring. When people better understand how wildlife moves, they can protect livestock while preserving the necessary balance with the surrounding environment. If you found this story useful, share your thoughts below.